Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are closing in on the trade deadline here in 2029, and it has been a bit of a disappointing season for the Royals. We are 55 and 48, but we are 3 games out of first place in the AL Central. And we are actually 1 game out of the wild card. If the season were to finish today, the Royals would not be in the playoffs. And as you can see here from our owner goals, our owner's expecting us to win a championship this year. So it has been a bit of a disappointing season. Part of the reason for that is a couple of key injuries. We've lost our former Cy Young Award winner Trevor Rogers for the season with surgery to remove bone spur in his elbow. We've lost Peyton Williams, who hit 49 home runs for us just 2 seasons ago for the season now with a torn thigh muscle not that long ago. And we've been without our key acquisition from last offseason, center fielder Luis Jose, for close to 3 months. Fortunately, he is close to returning from that fractured ankle, so we expect that the return of Jose to the lineup, hopefully before August, even after he rehabs for a few days down in Omaha, will give us a little boost to our performance, especially offensively, because we've once again had an excellent pitching staff, second in the American League in runs allowed, but we are middle of the pack in runs scored at this point. We're 8th in the AL in runs scored, so we could definitely use a boost to our offense. And given that we are in win now mode, we've got a little bit of money left to take on some salary right now, so we are going to see what we can do to maybe improve the offense a little bit as we approach the trade deadline. There are no massive additions that could be made through trade, at least according to who's on the trading block. If you look here at the biggest batters around are all kind of 3-star kind of players, so no huge impact players likely to be found among them, but we'll do our best. Pitchers is a little different. Anderson Paulino, who is an excellent starting pitcher, is available. He's in the final year of his contract with the Cubs. Would obviously be a huge addition to our team, especially with the departure of Rogers, but we have no player who makes this deal work. If we added in Spencer Bauer, the top pitcher on our team, can see even that wouldn't do it. So we will not be trading away Spencer Bauer, even if we added in Bobby Witt Jr. It's a very bad deal for us if we offered them Bobby Witt Jr., and we'd have to add in a Spencer Bauer or a Shi-Tong Kin or a Caleb Lagerwell to make it work. So clearly we won't be adding the top player available, Anderson Paulino, and I think that if anything, we don't want to destroy our farm system. Our farm system is finally, after a couple years of being not as good, starting to move in the right direction. We rank 9th overall, still have the 6th best prospect in the game with Alex Vasquez, who not so long ago moved up for his first action in AAA. So we want to make the playoffs this year, obviously, and if we make the playoffs, we obviously want to make a run at the World Series championship, but I don't feel like we're going to mortgage the future this year. Hopefully the return of Jose to the lineup will give us a boost in terms of our offense, and obviously be a big upgrade defensively, given that he's won 2 AL Gold Gloves in center field in a row for the Red Sox before we traded for him last offseason. So I think the addition of Jose will help us both offensively and defensively, but I think we can still use a little more hope on the offensive side, and given that I don't really want to deplete the farm system all that much, I would potentially be willing to deal a pitcher. As I talked about earlier, we've got the 2nd best pitching staff in the AL in terms of runs allowed. And we have a guy in AAA right now who has been a pretty effective pitcher up at the major league level this year, and Bryce Hubbard has made his major league debut, been up and down a few times, but he's put up a 1.85 over 24 and a third innings pitched. You look at the way he profiles, and he definitely can be average to above average major league pitcher, even has the stamina to start with us at the major league level if we needed him to. But you can see he's worked out of the pen with the Royals this year, but would not mind bringing him back up. So from that perspective, if we have to trade away an arm in our bullpen to bring on a little bit more offensive help, I believe I'm willing to do that. And I think I have found a deal that will do what I had hoped. As we talked about in our last episode, while Jose has been injured, Jason Dominguez has been a total disaster in center field, hitting just a .182 this season, 58 OPS plus. He does have option years left, so we can potentially send him to the minors. So with Jose coming back, his roster spot was in jeopardy anyways, but he's hit so poorly, I just don't even know that I want him to be my backup center fielder. So Josh Lowe is on the trade block from the Cubs. You can see he profiles as an average-ish offensive player, and quite honestly, over the course of his major league career with a 89 OPS plus and an 89 WRC plus, probably been a little bit of a below average offensive player, but he's respectable defensively. And even though he's only hitting 230 this year, a 230 batting average with a 92 OPS plus, given that he does have 14 homers in 100 and in 383 at bats, is a lot better than that .182 batting average that Dominguez has put up for us. And then Josh Young is another player who is also on the trade block for the Cubs. You can see similar profiles as maybe a bit above average as an offensive player, and he's performed that way with a 106 OPS plus and a 105 WRC plus over the course of his career. He also has another year on his contract, and we're able to potentially get the Cubs to retain most of his contract. Lowe is just a one-year rental. But what I'm thinking with Josh Young is that he can absolutely back up Bobby Witt Jr. at third. He could be a shortstop for us in a pinch. And he is 6'2". We could potentially, next spring training, train him to play first base for us. And with the Cubs retaining most of his contract, that may allow us to move on from Zach DeCenzo, who is on target to be making about $5 million in arbitration next year for a backup infielder who's not all that great a hitter. You can see he's split this year between Omaha and Kansas City. He's hitting just 116, admittedly in a small sample size of just 43 at-bats since he came back from his injury. But I don't know that I want to be spending $5 million a year for a backup infielder. So we may look to trade him either in the next week or so if we complete this trade, or certainly next offseason before we have to pay him $5 million a year. And Josh Young at least can go into that one of our utility infielder roles next year. So I feel that Lowe will give us a really good bat and a solid glove to be backing up Luis Jose when he comes back in a couple days, and we can send Dominguez into the minors. And then Josh Young will give us a player who could absolutely take over at some point for DeCenzo as our backup infielder, or as one of our backup infielders. As far as prospects, they're only looking for Willie Ortega, who's a 19-year-old minor league a scouting discovery by our staff. You know, he's out with a strained oblique, but certainly doesn't profile. He's got a ton of pitches, but none of them profile as really major league quality, except for possibly his splitter or his forkball. But also just his overall stuff, movement, and control. You know, best case scenario is he becomes a useful major league pitcher. The painful part, though, is weakening our bullpen significantly by trading away Will Klein, who was the AL reliever of the year last year when he struck out 126 batters over 91-plus innings, put up a 2.95 ERA. Can see he's got an incredible fastball, great stuff, excellent movement, a ground ball pitcher who throws around 100 miles an hour. He's been great this year with a 2.19 ERA over 37 innings pitched, and you can see over the course of his career he's put up a 137 ERA plus and a 76 FIP minus. So he has been an excellent pitcher for us. He's only going to be making about $2.5 million next year in arbitration. But the opportunity to potentially have Young next year for a reasonable price, and to also hopefully with Josh Lowe joining us really fix our center field position behind Jose is attractive to us. The other thing we like about Josh Lowe, left-handed bat, so another left-handed bat in the lineup. We're obviously right-handed heavy among our infielders. We do have some other lefties in the outfield, but I think we're going to go ahead and make this trade. It stinks to lose Will Klein, but as I talked about, we've got someone in AAA who I think can do most of what he does for us. And I also think there's probably an opportunity that we can pick up a reliever that some other team is looking to get rid of, who's probably not going to be as good as Will Klein, but not going to cost us all that much. So I think we've made our bench a lot better with Lowe and Young. And I think we can replace Klein a little bit more easily. We'll see if we can come up with another reliever. But we're going to go ahead and complete this trade. And the fans are actually happy that we picked up Josh Lowe. So it's going to be interesting. Got two players we got to find the spot for on the roster right now. And I think we're definitely going to send Jason Dominguez down to AAA and put Lowe onto the roster. He'll probably be starting in center field for us for the next week or so till we hopefully get Jose back from injury. And we're actually going to send Zach DeCenzo down. Bring Young up to the major league team and see what the lineup looks like according to Nichols at this point. Young is actually going to be our starting DH against both righties and lefties, surprising a little bit. And Josh Lowe, as you can see, goes in and he's going to be batting fifth and playing center field for us against right-handers. And actually going to be batting fifth and playing center field against left-handers. So I think that says a lot about our team, that bringing on these two guys who are kind of average-ish offensive players, they go right into our starting lineup. Now I think with Luis Jose coming back, hopefully in a week or so, that'll get Lowe out of the starting lineup. But I think those bats will help us a little bit, and bringing Jose on board will help us. Now, obviously, what we need to do is figure out what we want to do in terms of pitching. We could obviously bring Bryce Hubbart back up, but as we are close to the trade deadline, I'm going to look and just see if there's someone even better that maybe we can pick up for a relatively low price to replace Klein. And I think, unfortunately for Mr. Hubbart, he's going to still kind of remain our insurance policy down in AAA. We can add Colby White from the Blue Jays, and they'll actually retain even 35% of his salary. You can see he's got really good stuff, really good movement, plus control, strong fastball, and a strong slider. 31 years old, over the course of his major league career, has been a really outstanding reliever with a 73 FIP minus, a 144 ERA plus. So I think adding him will almost replace everything that we lost with Klein. We do have to give up a, I guess, somewhat intriguing starting pitching prospect, Eric Yost. He's a 26-year-old who's never gotten above single A for us, so he's not all that great a prospect. But if you actually look, he does have a good fastball, curve, and changeup. Decent stuff and decent control. The issue is movement. Doesn't have a ton of movement on his pitches, and he's a fly ball pitcher, only throwing in the mid-90s. So I think it's unlikely that he's ever going to be real effective at the major league level. So I don't view moving on from him as a huge loss for us for 2+ months of Colby White in our bullpen. So I'm kind of thinking we make this trade, bring on Colby White, and we haven't really weakened our bullpen all that much because we've been able to replace Klein with White. We've given up a couple of middling prospects, but we've got Lowe for the rest of the season to start for us in center field until Jose comes back, and then hopefully give us a decent pinch hitter and fourth outfielder off the bench. And then we've got Josh Young for the rest of this year and also next season to be a pretty cost-effective and decent hitting utility infielder for us. So not revolutionary as far as the trades we've pulled off, and we've still obviously got a few days to see if we can do something else, see if anybody else shows up on the trade block that's interesting. But I think on the margin we've made the Royals a little better, and honestly, we're only one game out of the playoffs. We're getting Jose back, hopefully within the next week. And when you look at the expanded standings, we've kind of still underperformed expectation by 5 games and have still at this point the best run differential in the American League. So I feel making a couple of minor improvements with the trades and getting Jose back hopefully is enough to kind of make up the one game in the standings, keeping us out of the playoffs, and ultimately hopefully enough to make up the 3 games that are keeping us out of winning the AL Central. But we'll worry about that once we are clearly in the wild card at the very least. And we've allowed manager Byron Nichols to update our pitching staff, and you can see Colby White slots right into a primary setup role right in front of our closer Austin Roberts. So hopefully he will be pitching some pretty important innings for us, and hopefully he doesn't get injured. It looks like I was starting to say the word injury there. We will see what Colby White can do, and we'll see what Lowe and Young can do for us. And hopefully about a week from now, we'll also have Jose back from his rehab assignment following his injury. And at least the initial result of those trades is very negative. You can see we are struggling as we get here towards the end of July, 7 games behind now. Lost our last 2. Really not pretty at all for us. We're now still only a game out of the wild card, I guess, so we're hanging in there on the wild card side, but we are quickly dropping out of contention for the AL Central. There's a thought maybe we try to make one more trade, but at this point, after those trades we've made, we don't even have a ton of money left to bring on salary. So we'd probably have to give someone who's making a little bit of money away, which is probably one of our better players. So not sure that there's anything else for us to do. I definitely want to make the playoffs this year. But I don't want to overpay to do it. I feel like Jose is about to get back. He's been down in Omaha, played 2 games there, only has 3 at-bats. Doesn't have a hit yet. Probably will give him another day or 2 down there. Given that he's fragile, we want to make sure he can work his way back into shape as best as possible before we're putting him back into the major league lineup. But don't love the way the team is playing. But I also don't think at this point that I want to go and massively overpay for someone on the trade block. And there's really nobody new available on the trade block that I think would make a huge difference for us, either as far as batters or pitchers. Obviously, we looked at Paulino. That would have been a real expensive trade for us to make. So I think we're going to go with the trades of Lowe and Young and Colby White, and that's going to be what we do. And hopefully the Royals can play a little better over the last couple months of the season and get back into the playoffs this year. But we've done what we're going to do. It's up to these guys to execute on the field now over the last couple months of the season and get the Royals back into October. Luis Jose has not been playing well at all down in Omaha. You can see just 2 for 17 with a couple of singles. Would like to see a little more from him. I don't want to keep him down there forever, but if he's going to be rusty and needs a few games to get back into better shape and to start hitting the ball a little better, I'd rather have him spending them down in Omaha than at the major league team, because you can see we're still kind of barely above 500 at this point, so we're going to need some production out of him when he does get back up here. And I guess Jose is hitting a little better on his rehab assignment, not 4 for 28. He has hit a home run, got his batting average up to 143. Obviously a very small sample size, but the Royals at this point on August 6th are only one game above 500. We are 9 games back in the division. And we're now kind of dropping in the wild card race too, 2.5 games out of the wild card. So I think it's time to bring Jose up and see if hopefully he can kickstart this offense for us, because we definitely need some help. And we're going to send Juan Pablo Correa back down to Omaha. Hit just 143 and 28 at-bats up with the big clubs, so clearly could use a little bit more seasoning potentially. That will allow us to get Jose back onto the active roster, although he was injured for such a long time. I've got to put him on the 40-man roster first, although am I completely... Yeah, I'm going to have to release somebody to clear some space for him on the 40-man roster. Fortunately, we have some pretty mediocre players on the 40-man. Lucas Ishmaeli, former first-round pick for us back in 2023, is hitting 279 this year in AAA, but profiles as a below-average offensive player at the major league level and a pretty mediocre defensive player also. So I don't imagine anyone's going to pick him up, but we will waive and DFA Mr. Ishmaeli. And that will open up the roster spot on the 40-man where we can bring Luis Jose back up to the majors. Take a look at what Byron Nichols thinks, and Luis Jose is back into our starting lineup against both righties and lefties. And that actually moves Josh Lowe into right field, so it looks like... at least against left-handed pitcher and against right-handed pitchers. So Byron Nichols likes Josh Lowe, interestingly, and Josh Young, still also at least against left-handed batters, is going to be getting a little playing time at DH. So we'll see what those 2 new additions to the team can do. We are going to need to... We're going to need to improve over this last month and a half, 2 months of the season. As I mentioned, just 1 game over 500 now, but the players that we're going to have for this playoff push are all healthy, because Rogers and Williams are gone for the year most likely. They're definitely gone for the regular season. I guess there's a slim chance that we might get one of them back if we make a long playoff run. And we've simmed ahead another couple weeks to August 20th. The Royals playing a little better, 66 and 60 record, but you can see we're still 8.5 out in the division. So the division is looking real unlikely. We're 1 game out of the wild card, so we've made up some ground with that 7-3 record over our last 10, at least on the wild card. You can see we haven't made up any ground at all on the White Sox over the last 10. Looking at some of the league leaders, Sal Frelick and Bobby Witt Jr. as usual among the AL leaders in stolen bases, and then Caleb Lagerwell still having a nice year, second in the league, or actually third technically, as there's 2 guys tied for first in wins, and is second in the league in pitcher WAR at 3.7. He is 14 and 6 with a 2.92 ERA, so he is having a real nice year for us. Just checking in quickly on the players that we traded for not that long ago to see how they're doing. Josh Lowe batting just 200 for us over 75 at-bats, so that's obviously not optimal. Luis Jose has not hit all that well since he came back to us either. His batting average for the year down to 268, so he's continued some of the struggles that he had in Omaha. Hopefully he'll get more productive soon. And last but not least, Josh Young hitting just 239 for us over 46 at-bats. So not getting a ton of offensive production from the players that have been added to the team or come back from injury recently. Colby White has also been not as good as advertised with a 5.59 ERA over 9 2/3 innings pitched. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more from him over these last couple of weeks of August and into September. And as we get closer to the end of October, Royals have started playing better, closing the gap to 5.5 in the division on the White Sox, who aren't playing as well. You can see we're still 7-3 over our most recent 10 games, made up 3 games on them, and we're still a game out of the wild card, though. So gonna need to continue to progress a little bit to ensure that we have a wild card spot. We do have a little injury to deal with. Josh Young, back spasms, moderate impact on running, minimal impact on hitting. He hasn't hit all that much for us, 250 over 50, 2 at-bats. The nice thing is we can be real conservative with him, put him on the IL since we do have back down in AAA Zach DeCenzo, who is a proven major league hitter, although his batting average has dropped to 264 in AAA, and he didn't do much when he was up with us, but does have that home run power, does have a lot of major league experience, so we'll put DeCenzo back onto the major league roster, see what Nichols thinks the lineup should look like. And it looks like DeCenzo is going to go right into that DH role against lefties that Young was in. So hopefully we can catch a little lightning in the bottle with DeCenzo over the next week and a half while Young is banged up. We're just a couple days away from September roster expansion. So if DeCenzo plays well over the next week and a half or so until Young can come off the IL, it'll likely mean that we'll keep DeCenzo up here for September. And we have made it to September, so we're going to get to add a couple people to the roster now. Only 4.5 games back in the division, which is positive, and only half a game back in the wild card race. So we are making up some ground, playing a little better recently. Pitching, if you've been following along, you definitely know who we want to bring up. He's been up and down a few times this year, but Bryce Hubbart, going to give him another chance. He had a really nice year for us down in AAA so far and has been very effective at the major league level too. So we will see what Hubbart can do with a little more playing time. 3.02 ERA with an 11-7 record as a starter in Omaha and a 1.85 ERA up here in Kansas City. So we'll get to see what Mr. Hubbart can do. And then obviously until about a week from now when Young can potentially come off of the IL, and then we'll have to make a roster decision. But until then, we're going to be able to bring up another position player. Question is whether we want to bring up Alex Vasquez, number 6 prospect in the game, 22 years old, profiles that he's absolutely ready to hit major league ball. He's only hit 232 in AAA in 272 at-bats this year after crushing the ball at a 320 pace down in AA. Clearly, based on the ratings, he's major league ready, so he is definitely an option to bring up. I think that bat could be very interesting and potentially pay some dividends. I guess the other guy we would consider bringing up is Jason Dominguez. He has hit 283 down in Omaha, so he has been a little more effective down there. But I think we kind of know what we have in Dominguez. So I am actually going to not force start Vasquez at first base. Not going to force him to play at the major league level, and he's probably not going to get a ton of playing time. Although who knows, he could actually slot in at DH or something ahead of DeCenzo. We'll see what Byron Nichols wants the lineup to look like. and he is gonna give the youngster some playing time. Alex Vasquez is going to slot right in as our starting first baseman, even though he's not all that great defensively, and bat fifth against right-handed pitching. So DeCenzo is also going to stay in the lineup. Jose Barrero going to get some time at DH. So interesting. Wow, that's really interesting. Ricardo Cabrera, our young second baseman, is he's had a tough year, hitting just 238 and 437 at bats, but pivoting and putting Vasquez in at first base, that lets Shitong Kin slide over to second, and apparently we'd rather have Jose Barrero's bat in. So I got to assume that hopefully Nichols is making the right decisions, definitely going to get a little more offense, and we'll see if maybe with the 22-year-old Alex Vasquez, one of the top prospects in baseball, making his major league debut, maybe he can hit for us over these next couple of weeks and help push us towards a playoff spot as we get into September. And I did just remember that we still had John Lara, who was a third-round pick, was going to be impossible to sign. Wanted to circle back with him after we kind of made our final trade deadline moves. He was looking for over $9 million. We have only $632,301 to offer to him. So I'm pretty confident he's going to refuse this offer, and we'll get a third rounder to replace him next year since we didn't sign him. But figured I'd give it a shot. It'll be real interesting to see if we can sign someone who was impossible to sign with those last few pennies that we have. I don't think it's likely, though. Not surprisingly, John Lara not going to sign with us, so we'll get a compensatory pick next year for failing to sign him. That was kind of a shot in the dark, but we gave it a try. You can see we're playing a lot better, only 2.5 out in the Central. We still are a game out of the wild card, so we're going to have to get past the Tigers and or the White Sox at one point. But we're as close as we've been in quite some time to the AL Central, and we've been playing better than the White Sox and Tigers over the last several weeks. So hopefully here, as we get into the final weeks of the season, the Royals can continue to make up some ground on those teams ahead of us. And honestly, you look 83 wins is leading the East, and then the White Sox and the Angels are tied at 81 wins in the Central, and AL West leading teams. So it's not inconceivable if we win the AL Central that we could actually end up with a bye and avoid the wild card series at all. But at this point, I'd still be just happy to be in the playoffs. We'll worry about whether or not we can claim the division and have a round bye a couple weeks from now if we keep playing 600 kind of baseball over the next few weeks. And we've now officially failed to sign John Lara, so we did get our compensation picks for next year for him, which will be good. We are still 2.5 out. We've closed a half game closer to the Tigers, so we're only half a game out of the wild card. But this is going to be a crazy battle for the playoffs. It looks like, though, with us 5 games up on the Astros, that it really in the American League at this point is 7 teams fighting for 6 playoff spots. So hopefully when all is said and done, we will be one of those 6. And we had a big series with Detroit. We won the first game of the 3-game set, but then they took 2 in a row from us. We did just win an 11 against Seattle, and now Josh Young is able to come back. But you can see we have a lot of games with the White Sox, who we're still chasing. 6 of our final 11 games, it looks like, will be against the White Sox. So the division is definitely still in our hands, but we're 4 games behind at this point. And we are 1 game out of the wild card. So it's going to be an interesting finish here. We're 83 and 68, playing good ball, but there is a group of haves and have-nots in the American League, and right now with a .550 winning percentage, we are the the worst of the halves. The Astros and the Rays are kind of the only middle of the road teams, and then everyone else in the American League is pretty bad. So not a ton of parity this year. And with Young ready to come back, got a decision to make. Zach DeCenzo hitting just $125 in the majors this year, so he hasn't really turned things around in the limited playing time he's got since he came back. And the youngster Alex Vasquez hitting $265 with his first major league home run. So we are going to keep Vasquez up, see what he can do, send DeCenzo back down to AAA Omaha, bring Josh Young back up, and see what Nichols wants to do with the lineup. Looks like he has Young in the lineup, is the DH against lefties now. Alex Vasquez still playing first base. And Shitong Kin is still our second baseman. So Ricardo Cabrera out of the lineup every day, which is a little bit surprising for our 24-year-old third baseman, but he hasn't hit that well this year, and I do like the fact that we're at least throwing Alex Vasquez right in there and seeing what he can do at the major league level against both lefties, or against both righties and lefties at this point. So we will see what the youngster can do. He should be playing a prominent role with our team going forward, so good to see him get some action here over the last couple weeks of the season, and hopefully he can add to that first major league homer and help us win a couple of games as we push for a playoff spot over these last 2 weeks of the season. And as we head into the last week of the regular season, or last week and a half of the regular season, the good news is we just won a 10-inning game against Seattle. The bad news is Bobby Witt Jr.'s season is over. Fractured thumb, out for 3 to 4 weeks. So if we make the playoffs and we win a series or two, maybe we have him back. If not, his regular season is obviously over. So for the year, 275 batting average, 19 homers, 85 driven in, 87 runs scored, 35 doubles, 31 stolen bases, caught stealing 9 times, so his efficiency on the bases is not as good as it has been in some previous seasons. 117 OPS plus, though, 113 WRC plus, and a 4.9 WAR for the perennial Gold Glove winner at third base in the American League. So obviously not optimal to lose him as we are involved in this playoff push. But it is what it is. We do have Josh Young, who presumably is going to be going in and becoming our starting third baseman, who we picked up in trade. So we'll hope that he can come up big for us over these last few games of the season. We're tied with the Tigers now, 4 games out, so that means we are tied for the last wild card spot in the American League. We do have the tough task of playing the best team in our division, the White Sox, quite a lot over these last few weeks of the season. You can see the schedule. We've got a day off tomorrow, and then we're going to have 3 at home against the White Sox. Definitely need to take 2 out of 3 there. Then we're going to go on the road against the Twins and on the road against the White Sox for our final 6 games. The Twins are not in the playoff race at this point, so the goal is certainly going to be to take 2 out of 3 against the Twins. And then obviously we're going to want to take 2 out of 3 against the White Sox too. I think if we win all 3 of these series, we'll certainly be in the playoffs. But, quite honestly, winning 2 out of 3 against the White Sox is not going to be enough to close the 4-game gap that they have on us in the division right now. So this is going to be a real interesting push for the playoffs, especially now with the loss of our best player for these last 9 games of the regular season. And DeCenzo, obviously it's been a small sample size with just 56 at-bats, but he's been such a disaster at the major league level this year. You can see his arbitration estimate, though. He's been such a disaster and spent so much time in AAA that his arbitration number has gone from over 5 million to about 3.3 million over the last 8 weeks or so of simming. But we are actually going to bring Jason Dominguez back. He has hit pretty well down in Omaha, 281 down there. He's clearly not going to be a starter with the fact that we have both Luis Jose and Josh Lowe likely ahead of him in center field, but we'll give Dominguez a chance to see what he can do over these last 9 games of the year as we try to make up for the loss of Bobby Witt Jr. And you can see, Josh Young is going to go in and be our starting third baseman for these last 9 games of the year. So hopefully the acquisition of him before the trade deadline and the subsequent injury to Bobby Witt Jr. will allow Mr. Young to pay some dividends for us over these final week and a half of the season. And we're ready to begin simming these last 9 games of the year. Still 4 games out in the division. Still 4 games, or still tied with the Tigers for that last wild card spot. So it's going to be real important that we win 2 out of 3 at least against Chicago in our final homestand of the regular season. If we want any chance at winning the division, we've obviously got to sweep them. I'll take 2 out of 3. The one thing I am going to change as we get ready for this push for the playoffs is Spencer Bauer. We have our ace, although at 10-10 with a 4.52 ERA, he hasn't really had an ace-type season for us. He throws hard, though, with 189 strikeouts over those 141 and a third innings, but we lower his pitch count during the regular season to try to keep his fragile arm healthy, but we're going to up the pitch count to the 100 that we've upped it to the last couple years in the playoffs because we're basically in playoff baseball right now. We need a big game from Bauer, and he is going up against Clinchy, the excellent pitcher for the White Sox, 17-8 record, 273 strikeouts over 201 innings pitched. Been an all-star twice and won the AL Cy Young Award last year. Definitely looks like he's a very strong candidate to win it again. So this is a tough game for the Royals, but it's the type of game that we're going to have to win at home with our ace on the mound against their ace. And we did get the win 2-0, but if you saw that pop up quickly, Austin Roberts, our closer, strained forearm, day-to-day for the next week. Minimal impact on hitting, but a moderate impact on throwing, so that is not optimal. It's only going to have an impact for a week. I'm not going to put him on the IL. We've got the extra pitcher up on the major league team right now. So we are going to bench him for the next week. But I feel like with 13 pitchers still on the major league roster, even if we're not going to be using Roberts for the next week, we should be able to get through these games. And that will give us an option if he's healthy for those last couple games of the year. We'll have our closer back in what could be critical games against the White Sox as we're trying to clinch a playoff spot. So I think we got to keep the optionality for him because if we put him on the 15-day IL, he's gone until the playoffs, and we might not even make the playoffs. So we'll go with one pitcher less over the next week and hope that we get Roberts back for those final game or two against the White Sox a week from now. Moving on to, assuming this message before I do move on. Oh, it actually was not about the injury. It was just about Paul Sean Pasqualato, who had a respectable year for us as a AAA pitcher this year. But we are much more interested in what's going on at the major league level at this point. Going up against Sandy Alcantara, who's now pitching for the White Sox today. Another game for the Royals. and we got another win. So we've got the series win. Obviously, now we want to go for the sweep. 2 games out in the division, and the Tigers have split their first 2 games so far, so we're up a game on the Tigers for that last wild card spot. So for the first time in quite some time, we would be in the playoffs if the season ended today, but it's only by a game with 7 games to go, so still a lot of pressure on us. Would really help to take this 3rd game at home, final home game against the season. If we can sweep the White Sox and be just 1 game behind them, would obviously feel a lot better about our chances if we're still competing for both the division and the wild card spot instead of just that wild card spot. But a 2-0 loss, so the division isn't over, but we're 3 games out with 6 to go, so we're going to need to do well against the Twins. The Twins in the upcoming series. Let's see what happened with the Tigers, and the Tigers actually lost, so we're still a game up on them, which is positive, I guess. I wonder if the Tigers and the White Sox are playing. That's really the best case scenario for us, because it'll guarantee at least 3 losses for some combination of those teams. And the White Sox are not. They are on the road at San Francisco. We'll see who the Tigers are playing. The Tigers finish with 6 games against the Guardians. So the Tigers have a pretty easy schedule against the Guardians, which doesn't help us all that much. And the Giants are a 500-ish kind of team, so a little more challenging for the White Sox. But we got the Twins, which is easy, but then we've got the White Sox, which is hard, while the Tigers have got 6 games against the Guardians, who are way out of the playoffs, although they have won 5 in a row. So we're up a game on the Tigers, but the schedule over this last 6 games of the season favors them. So we need to take 2 out of 3 against the Twins at a minimum, even though we're going to be on the road. Game 1 here in Minnesota, and we lose. Fortunately, the Tigers seem to keep on losing. And look at these crazy divisional races with the Yankees and the Red Sox tied in the East, and now the Angels and the Mariners tied in the West. It is going to be a crazy finish in the American League. The Yankees and the Red Sox, one of those teams is likely to have a first-round bye and home field advantage, and one of those teams is going to be playing in a wild card series. So it is going to be a crazy finish here. Obviously very disappointing to lose that first game to Minnesota. Hoping to win the series, which means we're going to have to take 2 in a row on the road. And we lost again in 10 innings. Oh, that's brutal. 86-72 record. Dabovich blows the save. Didn't pitch well at all after we got a nice game from Jacobs. Clearly the loss of our closer, Roberts, may have come back to haunt us in that game. Fortunately, the Tigers keep losing to the Guardians, who have now won 7 in a row. So we are still a game up on the Tigers, but they've got 4 games left against the Guardians. We've got 1 against the Twins and then 3 against the White Sox. So the schedule still kind of favors the Tigers. We've got to win this game against the Twins, though. We can't get swept. We can't get swept. Can we? That blue circle is mocking me, and we did get swept, and the Tigers have won. So now we are tied for the wild card with 3 games to go. We are 3 games out of the division, so I guess in a way we control our destiny. If we can win 3 in a row on the road against the White Sox, that'll push us into a tie for the division title. But this is going to be a wild finish to the season. You can see the Yankees and the Red Sox still tied, and the Mariners just up 1 game on the Angels. and then our Royals, the Tigers, and the White Sox all fighting too. So still 7 teams fighting for those 6 playoff spots in the American League. But quite honestly, it's really the Tigers and the Royals fighting for the last playoff spot at this point. So we've got a shot at the division if we win 3 in a row, but we are playing the best team in the division, and the Tigers are playing the worst team in the division. So I think the odds makers in Las Vegas would say that the Royals are not going to make the playoffs here with 3 games left, but we will see what happens. And it's just been brutal after winning those first 2, looking for the sweep against the White Sox. We've now lost 4 in a row. 2-run game, 2-run game, 1-run game in extra innings, and then we kind of got our butts kicked 8-4 yesterday. But first game against Chicago, need a W. Got to stop this losing streak, and we lose again. Let's find out what happened with the Tigers. And the Tigers won, so now we are a game out of the wild card with 2 games left. We're out of the division, can't win the division. We could be eliminated today if we lose and the Tigers win. It's all over here in game 161 of the season, and we are going to be going up against Anthony Kay, who has been 12-2 with the White Sox with a 2.86 ERA. So a great season for Mr. K. We will have Caleb Lagerwell, who has been our ace this year, 14-7, although his ERA has creeped up to 3.42 over the last several weeks. But probably the guy that we want to have on the mound in a must-win game. Austin Roberts, still banged up with that strained forearm. I'm not going to pitch him today. Bench him for another day, so hopefully we'll have him tomorrow. I know the game might not matter tomorrow, but I don't know that I want a pitcher whose arm is messed up pitching critical innings for us either. So could all be over with a simple click. And of course it's going to pause, and we lost again, so I'm guessing that message may be that we're eliminated from the playoffs if Detroit won. We are out. So that is the epitome of a disappointing season for these Royals. In win now mode, had 4 consecutive playoff berths, and it's not going to be 5 consecutive playoff berths for these Royals. So want to win this final game of the season just for pride, but just a brutal stretch of baseball here with 6 losses in a row as we were fighting for a playoff spot. So it doesn't get any worse than this finish by the Royals. Let's see what happens in the final day of the season here today. And we lose again. So the Royals lose 7 in a row to finish the 2029 season. Our streak of 4 straight playoff appearances is done. Obviously not the way we wanted this season to end. Extremely disappointing. Ownership wanted us to build a dynasty. Ownership wanted us to win it all this year. We were barely above 500. I feel like this playthrough overall, it started here in 2022. We're up to 2029. So we've played 8 seasons, 7 winning records, and 4 playoff appearances, and 1 World Series championship. So it's been a pretty successful playthrough overall, but we've been in win now mode. So being in win now mode and not making it to the playoffs is really disappointing. Looking at the statistics for the season, and we'll obviously go much deeper into a recap of the season in our next episode, but we did get to 4th in the AL in runs scored, and we finished 2nd in runs allowed. So it's just another one of those seasons where we were just stupid unlucky. You look at the expanded standings, and we are 10 games below our Pythagorean expectation. We should have been 96 and 66. We finished 86 and 66. That plus 141 run differential was the best in the American League, even better than the Red Sox. And it was the third best in baseball behind just the Cardinals and the Mets. So you have the best run differential in the American League. You think you're going to be a playoff team. You finish fourth in batting in terms of runs scored. You finish second in pitching in terms of runs scored. You think you're going to be a playoff team, but 17 and 26 record in one-run games doesn't help, and obviously losing 7 in a row to end the season when you're fighting for a playoff spot doesn't help. So there's no other way to put it. A very disappointing 2029 for the Royals is now over and in the books. In our next episode, we'll kind of review all the stats from the season, see what happens to the teams that did make the playoffs, and start our preparation for next season. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.